One. Welcome to an episode of Rosie, your realtor here. We got Randy back again. Hey, Randy.
Hello, how you doing, Rosie?
Great. How are you?
Great, great.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know we before going live here, we were chatting for a bit. And today we
Yeah.
wanted to bring the consumer a little bit of information of what's going on in the market. I know there's a lot of commission talk in the media, and I
Mhm.
think it's creating a lot of confusion to both buyers and sellers. And so we just wanted to come on here and clarify it a little bit.
Yes, yes. And it even to the point, well, when we were pre-gaming for this, so to speak, it was a great conversation, and I think we hopefully will clean this up for you all and make it something that you can it helps you when you're buying a house. So that's our goal, and go ahead, Rosie. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, I agree with you. Our pregame was great. And I 100% agree that now more than ever, I think both buyers and sellers need to make sure that they're having representation. And not just, someone they know that just got in the business or, oh, I just looked up a random person, but someone that really knows what they're doing, understands the contracts, have been maybe doing it a while. And not to say that a new agent doesn't know what they're doing, just, make sure they have a strong mentor, right? We all got
Right.
to start somewhere. But someone that really understands and has your best interest in mind. And one of the things I've said for years is someone that does this as a career because this is your biggest investment, right? And I've sometimes even being full time, it's like, oh, there's so much to keep up with. But how does a part time person that has a full time job and a family doing this on the side really understand it all? And I just, funny enough, closed a transaction where the agent had no idea about agent had no idea about these changes. And when he made a comment, so I comment, don't worry, you're still being compensated. He's like, well, why wouldn't I? And had no idea about this, where it seems like every other consumer, this is what they're talking about. So, that's an agent that I feel like, do they really understand what they're doing to best try to protect their client?
Right.
Um, and I know you wanted to share a story from the 90s, so I'll let you
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah, in the mid to actually, I think towards the late 90s,
Yeah.
most of the time there were in most scenarios, there was only one person representing the buyer and the seller, and it was the listing agent. And that's when it created a hornet's nest, and they're like, look, we need to have a separation. Like you said, it's the biggest investment of your life. And so we need a listing agent and a buyer agent. And it's worked really well. It really has. I think uh, without almost exception, it makes total sense. And you and I discussed this before we were on air here now, that a buyer needs to be represented by a buyer agent and a seller needs to be represented by a seller agent, and they need to be two different people. And just because of what happened in the late 90s, they were saying, look, I don't know what interest do you have? Is it more that you don't like at that time you're selling a house and you just don't like the person you're selling for? Yeah, of course you don't let them know because obviously you wanted the commission or whatever. But
Yeah.
now let's take that out of the equation, and the biggest investment of our life, let's make sure that we have representation on both sides. And I think with the new law that they're talking in some scenarios, people think that, okay, it's going to go back to that. And my opinion is it's not. I think it's still going to stay status quo, and I think there's a reason for it to stay status quo. I think it's very important to have a buyer agent and a listing agent, and two different agents representing obviously the buyer and the seller. So that's my take on the new law, and I don't think it is as complicated as a lot of people make it. And
I
if you want to
agree.
elaborate on that, you
Absolutely.
can. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first off, like I previously mentioned, if you have a full time, someone that's doing this career, a full time agent, representing you, and I think for a buyer, once you've made the decision, if you do, partner up with someone that knows what they're doing, they're sitting down, going over the process with you, have your best interest. Absolutely. I don't think this is as big a deal as everybody's making it out to be, but I think it's a lot of the known, a lot of, the speculation, and where before, a buyer could be driving around and it's like, oh, I just I want to go in that house. Obviously, there's some rules now. We can't just run out and show a house. And not that, kind of to touch on a previous subject, not that, because I know that I have had situations where I ended up representation of both buyers and sellers, but I kind of have my flow that this is what I always do for a buyer, this is what I always do for a seller, and where do we find that happy medium? And so I think there is agents out there that can do that, and really try to best advise both clients, for the clients, not just their pocketbook. But I think in most cases, it doesn't work when one agent represent both sides. And I say that because I've had many people that have come to me after the fact, right?
Right.
After the fact, or once in escrow, and they feel everything's going, things are going really south. And so, for example, a
Yes.
couple of times I've had someone that they went straight to the listing agent, bought the home, and now the home has issues. Well, I always 100%, unless you're an investor, because this is what you do for a living and you have a crew, that's really my only exception. When you're a buyer, whether it's your first home, second home, I always suggest a home inspection 100% of the time. So if I'm representing the seller and suddenly a buyer comes, I'm still going to tell them get a home inspection. But some of these files that I've reviewed, they didn't get a home inspection. The
Right.
listing agent who represented both just said, yeah, we'll basically do the paperwork, never had a home inspection. And some of these were first time buyers, and I've reviewed a couple of these. And now they're in a home with all these issues that they barely had the funds to get into the home, let alone now have all these repairs. And I think that's a great example of why you need a listing agent, right? I mean, a
Right.
buyer agent, and each person representing their own. Or I've
Right.
had situations where I had I had a listing and they had completely remodeled this house. I mean, the house was gorgeous, move-in ready. A buyer agent comes in, and this is where I felt like it was the other extreme. And they had asked for $20,000 worth of repairs. And this was like a completely remodeled home. And there was stuff on there like, instead of having just a smoke alarm, with a battery, they wanted it hot wired. Well, those aren't your normal things. I mean, to me, that's a silly request. Like, if you want it hot wired, wired directly, you do that yourself. When you're buying a house, you
Right.
make an offer based on your perceived condition of the home at current value, and you do the home inspection to make sure there's things you didn't see that might be wrong, that you obviously have the opportunity to ask, whoa, I didn't realize there was a big plumbing issue. I don't want to buy a house with $20,000, needed. But anyhow, now I'm just rambling. Absolutely, I think that getting an agent who is going to represent you, have your best interests at heart. And as far as the commission, as a listing agent, I will say I am still going to be prepping my sellers to plan on paying a buyer agent, because I
Yes.
know the market, and
Yes.
I know most buyers, especially here in Tennessee, in my specific area, they don't have the money for, barely have the money for closing costs or down payment, and
That's
many
right.
times asking for that, let alone now having money for the commission, right? So again, I can't stress enough of, don't just be calling the listing agents direct and think you're going to figure it out once you have an offer accepted, but really work with a buyer agent that's going to educate you, get you qualified, have a solid plan, and get out there and negotiate that so that you're not paying the buyer agent, if you may. Right?
Right. Right. And
Um,
and and that's a great point. And if you look back now, I mean, person listing at home has many options. They can do for sale by owner.
right.
They can give, when they're for sale by owner, give 0 commission on the buyer side up to 6% commission or whatever they want. And I just don't think that it's going to change. I think the disclosures are, obviously, as you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little more tedious, but that'll all get under control. But I will assure you all that as a consumer, uh, my children and I myself, and if I bought another house, I'm going to have a buyer agent present, and I understand the business. There's a lot of things that they do, a lot of hours spent, a lot of chasing down a lot of different scenarios when, and
Right.
actually, it's like everything else. And a lot of people that are listening to this today, there's so many things that you've done in your life that look easy at the end. Someone else looking in, it looks easy, but it's not. And especially in the home buying process. And I cannot emphasize enough how I really think there should be a buyer agent and a listing agent. Sure. Can you do for sub owner? Of course. Can you do somebody with a discount commission? Of course. So that's up to you. But in my scenario, with me being around as long as I have, I believe in a buyer agent and a listing agent, and a decent commission on both, and then go from there. So whatever that is, 5%, 6% total.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think you wanted to talk about what this does for value of homes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to comment when you said, real quick, you could do for sale by owner, no commission, this commission. But again, going back to when you're working with professionals, right? Not just part-timers. That's an outcome. I'm sure there's some great part-timers out there, but when you're working with a true professional that this is their career, they all not only understand the market and the negotiation part of it, but they know the numbers, the facts, right? And so, like, statistically speaking, I think most for sale by owners, they want to save money. They want to get, and I think to be fair, every seller wants the most for their house and every buyer wants the best deal.
Yeah.
But statistically speaking, on average, a home that's for sale by owner sells for 13% less than if you
Yes.
used an agent. So what I joke about is, we'll split the difference. You still end up with more, right? And I do all the work. Like, it's a win-win. And it's understanding, why is the seller thinking they want to do it for sale by owner? Why is the buyer thinking they want to go straight to the listing agent? Like,
That's a great point.
right? Instead of just,
Absolutely.
and I think that's where, unfortunately, like any industry, there's so many that just get their license, they get out there, let's hope we get some sales. We're not really understanding the process. And again, I think it just goes back to our point of, it's so important, not just important to be each side be represented, but having the right agent that knows what they're doing. Um,
Absolutely. Staging the house properly, if you're on the listing side. I mean, making sure you have the right colors, the clutter, not have family pictures up. That's a no-no.
yeah,
Because then somebody could
you
get emotional going,
depersonalize.
yeah, you depersonalize the situation when someone walks in the door, because if someone knows somebody and didn't know they were in it, or even they really said, man, that's a beautiful family, I don't want them to leave their house. I mean, there's just so many things that a listing agent and a buyer agent do. I didn't know all these things. I've learned these things through the years, and I'm like, well, that makes sense. And again, it looks like a lot of things. It looks easy at the end, but it's
It's
not.
not.
It,
Yeah.
it's and and even with that value scenario, we've already had for sale by owners, and the value is the value on a home. So, you know, commission to me is not going to change much, and it's not going to move the needle enough to really buy down or bring down housing, because I think in most scenarios, the 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 person that's listing a home is going to pay, probably at least a 5% commission. And um, I don't think that's going to change, with obviously part of that going to the listing agent and part going to buyer, and a lot of them a 6% commission. It's just there's just too much involved with real estate agents, and the process to get a client to the closing table. It's very intimidating, and
Right.
90% of the scenarios, and Rosie, you can elaborate on this as much as I can, is it's very intimidating for a consumer to go out and kind of take this on by themselves just with the lender. It doesn't, it's very hard to do. Even if you get all the to-do list
Absolutely.
on how to do it, Google, how do I buy a home without an agent?
Yeah.
There's a reason why. I mean, there's so much technology now, AI, everything, but there's a reason why in this scenario people pay to have someone represent them.
Yeah, we're the matchmakers. Who doesn't want the perfect match, right?
Exactly.
Well, and
Exactly.
I think there's a study that showed that for every one call to your agent is making 10 calls on the back end. And that's where
Right.
I don't think the consumer knows that, or, like, to your point, your job is to do the loan process. Your job's not to tell them, oh, did you get the home inspection? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you get, you know, we each play our role, and it's the agent that's supposed to help communicate with the lender, the title, the escrow, the
That's right.
inspectors, and educate the client on, yes, we need to do this, or, the inspector didn't suggest a termite. It's a new house. Let's not do it. Oh, the inspector thought there might be a possibility. Let's just be sure and let's do it. So yeah, I don't think that people should be scared to hire an agent, especially up front. You know, as long as you have an agent that explains to you the process and not makes you, you know, don't feel like, oh, you got to pay them up front, and then what if we don't even qualify? No, that's not the way it works. You know, get your agent that's going to educate you, put a plan together. So you're, you know, best prepared to get the house out there. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Um, I think what you're going to say that we were going to talk about is, you know, a seller can ask all day for, this is my asking price, and I'm not going to do any commission or whatever it is. And I jokingly said, well, but really, is the seller the one paying? Because it's the buyer that brings all the money, right? The
Right.
seller could say, this is what I want. Oh, if I pay commission, then, you know, this is the price I want. But really, it's the buyer that's bringing all the money to the table. And at the end of the day, I don't think it, you know, is it really the buyer or the seller, or is it, hey, let's work together because I have a goal to get a seller, right, to get the most that I could for a house, and the buyer has a goal to get the best deal or doesn't care about the price because it's their dream home. So how do two agents make that happen where both parties feel they won, right? If
Yes.
there's an
Yes.
issue with a pre-owned home, how do we negotiate maybe somewhere in the middle? Hey, you're buying a pre-owned home, put some little skin in it, and I'm, you know, trying to sell. I'll put some skin in it and just make it work.
Right.
Um, but again, that's where proper representation, they're going to tell you, hey, things are going to come up. That's my job to worry. You don't worry about that, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Um,
And your point was well taken on for sale by owner. They do sell for less money. I mean, it's factual, and I believe that.
yeah. Well, and that's where when you mentioned, you know, the staging, I go into the houses and you know, if they're moving out, is there some furniture they could leave, right? Because statistically speaking, a nicely staged house sells for the most, then a vacant house, and then a cluttered house, right? And so you
Uh-huh.
gotta, that's where a really good agent will also understand the psychology behind that. Why? Why do we stage the home? Why do we I call it depersonalizing, removing all the certificates, family pictures, and so forth that personalizes to the home? Because now a consumer could walk in and actually see the house and envision their stuff there, or, ooh, I want to put a little table there.
Hmm.
Versus when they come in and they see family pictures, they go to the pictures, and I think in times they forget to look at the house. So yeah, all those little things are absolutely so important. Having an agent that's really well rounded, understands that, you know, why do you bake cookies at open houses? But really, it all boils down to, don't feel overwhelmed, get a good agent, and let them let them do their job, right? Let them be your guide. It's gonna be okay. I don't think, other than you, like you said, a few forms changing, as long as you have a good agent, I don't know that it's going to affect the consumer that much.
I agree. I agree 100%. And it's exciting times as interest rates are dropping. And again, no better time than the present to buy, because I think we're going to possibly go back to the beginning of COVID where there's 40, 50 offers. There's so much pent up demand if you wait too long to buy a home right now, and because when interest rates do drop, you can just refinance the house. So no better time than present to get on Rosie and start the process of purchasing a home. I mean, really sincerely, and um, um, I think the information is out there now saying, hey, we're gonna be okay, because it was if you're
Well,
inside the industry. If you're outside the industry, it I don't think there's a lot of people really following it as much. I mean, they hear bits and pieces, but now that we're inside the industry, and you have a great leader in uh, Bob and Mark over there, and they really prepared you guys for this. So everything will be
yeah,
okay, and we're gonna, more importantly, most important part is take care of our clients.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is something I've been thinking about for yeah, months of how we're going to approach it. And totally agree that Bob and Mark are the best. There's a reason I picked this firm,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Um, but yeah, you know, for those people that married, what do they call it? Married a house and are dating the interest rate as they drop. If
yes.
you're looking to refinance, definitely reach out to Randy. And Randy, if they want to reach out directly to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, to call or text me at 502-645-0736. My email's on here as well, which you're just showing, but it seems like it's much easier for the client if they text or call 502-645-0736.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on here and having a little conversation with me to hopefully help put the consumers at ease and let them know it's gonna be okay. All
Oh,
right.
yes, it's
Let
going to
us
be
do the
okay.
work. You'll be fine. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rosie.
All right, Randy. Thank you so much.